The blood-red sunset painted the Montana horizon as Ryder Thompson rode across the dusty plains, his tired Mustang barely keeping pace with the howling wind. It was 1878, and the unforgiving territory had stripped away whatever softness remained in him after the war. 3 days' ride from Butte, he had seen enough death to last several lifetimes, but what awaited him beyond the ridge would haunt him forever. A woman lay crumpled beside an abandoned wagon, her face swollen beyond recognition, dress torn and bloodied. For a moment, Ryder thought she was dead until a weak moan escaped her lips. Dismounting swiftly, he knelt beside her, careful not to startle her as he assessed her injuries in the fading light. "Madam, can you hear me?" His voice was gentle, a stark contrast to his weathered appearance. Her eyelids fluttered, revealing frightened blue eyes that widened in terror at the sight of him. She tried to crawl away but collapsed with a whimper of pain. "I won't hurt you," Ryder whispered, keeping his distance. "I'm going to help you." The woman trembled, clutching a torn shawl to her chest. "They'll come back," she managed through split lips. Ryder's jaw tightened. "You'll never be touched in anger again," he vowed, the words emerging from some deep, protective place inside him. "I promise you that." He didn't know who this woman was or what had happened to her, but in that moment, he knew with absolute certainty that he would die before letting anyone harm her again. "Name's Ryder Thompson," he said, slowly removing his canteen. "I'm taking you to Butte. There's a doctor there." "Katherine," she whispered before her eyes rolled back. Katherine Kirkland. Gathering her unconscious form into his arms, Ryder felt a rage unlike any he'd known since Shiloh. Someone had left this woman to die, and as he settled her onto his horse, wrapping his coat around her broken body, he made a silent promise to find whoever was responsible. The ride to Butte would take a full day at best, but Ryder knew Katherine wouldn't survive the journey without immediate attention. Half a mile ahead stood an abandoned line shack he'd noticed on his way out. It wasn't much, but it would provide shelter for the night. Inside, he laid Katherine on the single cot, lighting a lantern to better examine her injuries. Her face was a canvas of purple bruises, one eye swollen shut, dried blood caked in her auburn hair. Her breathing came shallow and pained, suggesting broken ribs. The sight made Ryder's stomach churn with a mixture of anger and compassion. He dampened his handkerchief with water from his canteen and began gently cleaning the blood from her face. Katherine stirred at his touch, terror flashing in her eyes. "You're safe," Ryder said quickly. "I'm just trying to clean these wounds." Recognition gradually replaced fear as she remembered their brief introduction. "Mr. Thompson," she whispered. "Just Ryder, madam." Katherine tried to sit up but winced sharply. "They took everything." "Who did?" "My husband's business partner and his men." Her voice was barely audible. "After James died of fever last month, Mr. Blackwell said everything belonged to him when I disputed it." She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her bruised cheeks. "This Blackwell did this to you?" Ryder asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "He watched, told his men to teach me my place." Katherine's breath hitched. "When I still refused to sign over the deed to our silver claim, he said leaving me for the wolves would solve his problem." Ryder's hand stilled. "Silver claim." "The Double K north of Butte. James struck a vein last spring." She met his gaze with surprising strength. "It's all I have left. I won't let them take it." Ryder nodded slowly. "First, we need to get you well, then we'll worry about your claim." He continued tending to her wounds, marveling at her fortitude. Most men would have succumbed to such injuries, yet here she was, concerned for her property outweighing her own suffering. "Why are you helping me?" Katherine asked suddenly. Ryder considered the question. "Because it's what decent folks do." "Decent folks are rare in these parts," she murmured. "I suppose they are." He stood, stretching his tall frame. "Try to rest. We'll head to Butte at first light." Katherine's hand caught his wrist, surprisingly strong despite her condition. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson." "Ryder," he corrected again, strangely moved by her touch. "Ryder," she repeated before drifting into an exhausted sleep. He watched her for a moment before stepping outside. The Montana night had fallen completely now, stars sprayed across the vast sky like silver dust. Ryder rolled a cigarette, his mind racing. After years of drifting, taking whatever work kept him fed, he suddenly found himself entangled in a situation that demanded commitment. He'd seen too many corrupt men like Blackwell in his time, men who used violence to take what wasn't theirs. By morning, Catherine's fever had spiked. Ryder packed the few supplies, lifted her onto his horse, and mounted behind her, cradling her unconscious form against his chest. But was still hours away. The mining town appeared on the horizon by mid-afternoon, smoke from its smelters darkening the sky. Ryder rode directly to the doctor's modest home near the center of town, drawing curious stares from passers-by. Dr. William Foster, a graying man with kind eyes and a perpetually worried expression, answered Ryder's urgent knock. "Good Lord," he exclaimed, taking in Catherine's condition. "Bring her in immediately." Ryder carried her to a small examination room, reluctantly stepping back as the doctor began his work. "What happened to her?" Foster asked, cutting away Catherine's tattered dress to reveal more bruises beneath. "Found her beaten near Davis Creek. Said it was a man named Blackwell and his gang." Foster's hands paused. "Reggie Blackwell," Ryder frowned. "You know him. Everyone knows Blackwell." The doctor resumed his examination. "Powerful man in these parts, owns half the businesses in Butte and has Sheriff Hollister in his pocket." He shook his head gravely. "If Blackwell did this, she's still in danger, even here." Ryder's jaw tightened. "She mentioned a silver claim." "The Double K," Foster nodded. "Her husband James made a significant strike before typhoid took him, richest vein discovered in these parts in years." He glanced up at Ryder. "Blackwell's been trying to get his hands on it since before James was cold in the ground." Ryder watched Catherine's pale face, remembering his promise. "I need a place for her to recover, somewhere safe." Foster hesitated. "My sister runs a boarding house on the edge of town. Very discreet, very secure." "Will she take us in?" "Us?" The doctor raised an eyebrow. "You're staying." Ryder met his gaze steadily. "I made her a promise." Foster studied him before nodding. "I'll send word to Martha, but first help me get these wounds cleaned properly." For the next 2 hours, Ryder assisted as the doctor tended to Catherine's injuries. 3 broken ribs, countless bruises, a dislocated shoulder, and a deep gash along her hairline that required stitches. Through it all, Katherine remained mercifully unconscious. "She's strong," Foster remarked as he applied a final bandage. "Most would have died from these injuries or the exposure." "Will she recover fully with proper care?" "Yes." The doctor washed blood from his hands. "But she can't be moved tonight. You can sleep in the waiting room." Ryder nodded gratefully. "I should warn you, doctor, if Blackwell learns she's alive, I understand the risk." Foster's expression hardened. "I've treated too many of Blackwell's victims to turn away now." Ryder spent a restless night in an uncomfortable chair, alert to every sound outside the doctor's home. At dawn, Katherine finally regained consciousness. "Where am I?" she asked weakly when Ryder entered her room. "Dr. Foster's. You're safe." He pulled a chair beside her bed. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been trampled by a herd of buffalo." A ghost of a smile touched her split lips. "But I'm alive, thanks to you." Ryder shifted uncomfortably. "The doctor did the real work. You could have left me there." Catherine's blue eyes studied him intently. "Most would have." "I'm not most," he replied simply. Before she could respond, Foster entered with a breakfast tray. "Good morning, Mrs. Kirkland. Glad to see you awake." Katherine attempted to sit up, wincing at the movement. Ryder instinctively reached forward to support her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Thank you, doctor," she said once settled. "For everything. You can thank me by following my instructions." Foster set the tray down. "Complete rest for at least a week. My sister's preparing a room at her boarding house where you'll stay during your recovery." "I have no money," Katherine admitted, shame coloring her voice. "They took everything." "That's been arranged," Foster said, glancing at Ryder. Katherine followed his gaze. "Mr. Thompson, I cannot accept. It's already done," Ryder interrupted. "Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better." "And how would I repay you?" she challenged, a flash of her true spirit showing through her injuries. Ryder's mouth quirked. "We'll figure something out once you're healed." Later that afternoon, with Katherine heavily dosed with laudanum for the pain, Ryder transported her to Martha Foster's boarding house. The 3-story Victorian stood on a quiet street away from Butte's noisy saloons and brothels. Martha, a stern-faced widow with her brother's kind eyes, showed them to a comfortable room on the 2nd floor. "No men allowed past the parlor," she informed Ryder firmly. but I'll make an exception for you to get Mrs. Kirkland settled." Once Katherine was resting comfortably, Martha pulled Ryder aside in the hallway. "William told me about Blackwell. That man's poison." She glanced at the closed door. "What's your plan for keeping her safe?" "I'm working on it," Ryder admitted. "First step is making sure Blackwell doesn't know she survived. And the second," Ryder's expression hardened, "finding out exactly what happened and making it right." Martha studied him. "You're not just some passing cowhand, are you, Mr. Thompson?" "Madam." "The way you carry yourself, the way you watch everything." Her eyes narrowed. "You've seen war." Ryder didn't confirm or deny it. "I'll be back tomorrow to check on Mrs. Kirkland." "I'll look after her," Martha promised. "But be careful, Blackwell has eyes everywhere in this town." Taking her warning to heart, Ryder found lodging at a small hotel on the opposite side of Butte. Using some of his dwindling savings, he purchased new clothing, a razor, and supplies. If he was going to protect Katherine and help her reclaim what was hers, he needed to blend into town life rather than stand out as a drifter. The next morning, cleaned up and wearing fresh clothes, Ryder began gathering information. At the land office, he confirmed that the Double K silver claim was indeed registered to James and Katherine Kirkland, with no legal transfers filed. At the assayer's office, he learned that ore samples from the claim had tested remarkably rich. And at Finnegan's Saloon, he discovered just how feared Reginald Blackwell truly was. "Don't even whisper that name in here," the barkeeper warned when Ryder casually inquired. "Man owns half the county and the other half's too scared to cross him." "Heard he had a business arrangement with James Kirkland," Ryder pressed, keeping his tone conversational. The barkeeper glanced nervously around the nearly empty saloon. "Look, stranger, I don't know what you're after, but that's dangerous talk. Kirkland's widow disappeared last week, and word is she ran off with the deed to spite Blackwell. He's offering a reward for information." Ryder hid his alarm behind a nonchalant sip of whiskey. "Big reward, $500. The barkeeper leaned closer. "But between us, anyone who turns her in likely won't live long enough to spend it. Blackwell doesn't leave loose ends." After finishing his drink, Ryder headed toward Martha's boarding house, taking a circuitous route to ensure he wasn't followed. Katherine was sitting up in bed when he entered her room, her face still badly bruised but her eyes clearer. "You look better," he observed, setting a small package on her bedside table. "Martha is a wonderful nurse." Katherine gestured to the chair beside her bed. "And you look different." "Almost respectable." Ryder smiled slightly as he sat. "Figured I should try to blend in while I'm in town. And how long will that be?" she asked carefully. "Until we settle your situation." He nodded toward the package. "Brought you something." Katherine unwrapped it to find a leather-bound journal and pencil. Her eyes widened in surprise. "How did you know?" "Martha mentioned you were a writer." Ryder shrugged. "Thought it might help pass the time during your recovery." "Thank you." She traced the cover with her fingertips. "It's been so long since anyone gave me a gift." Ryder cleared his throat, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "I checked the land office. The Double K is still legally yours." Her expression brightened. "So Blackwell couldn't file a transfer." "No, but he's telling everyone you ran off with the deed and is offering a reward for information on your whereabouts." Ryder leaned forward. "I need to know exactly what happened, Katherine. Everything about your husband's arrangement with Blackwell." For a moment he thought she might refuse, but then she squared her shoulders. James and Reginald were partners in a freight business. When James discovered the silver, he needed capital for equipment. Blackwell provided it in exchange for 20% of the profits. Her voice hardened. But the agreement was never formalized in writing. After James died, Blackwell claimed they were equal partners in everything, including the claim. "Do you have proof of the original agreement?" Katherine's expression fell. "Only James's journal, which Blackwell's men took when they..." She gestured to her battered face. "Everything was in their accounts, agreements, everything." Ryder nodded thoughtfully, "and the deed to the claim, hidden." A small, defiant smile appeared. "I sewed it into my corset lining before they came." They searched everywhere but never thought to check there. Despite the gravity of the situation, Ryder couldn't help returning her smile. "Clever woman. I wasn't about to let them take the one thing James left me." Her smile faded. "But what good is the deed if Blackwell controls the town?" Even with proof of ownership, how can I work the claim without his interference? Ryder considered his next words carefully. One step at a time. First you heal, then we secure your legal standing. After that, we'll see about operating the mine. Catherine's eyebrow rose. Figure of speech, Ryder amended quickly, though something in him resisted the correction. They talked until Katherine grew tired, Ryder sharing sanitized stories from his travels while carefully avoiding any mention of the war or his life before it. Katherine spoke of growing up in Boston, meeting James at a literary society, and their adventurous journey west 5 years earlier. He promised me material for a novel, she said with a wistful smile. He certainly delivered on that. As she drifted toward sleep, Ryder found himself studying her face. Even bruised, there was a delicate beauty there, a strength that transcended her physical injuries. Something protective stirred in him, something he hadn't felt in years. You should go, Katherine murmured, eyes already closed. Martha will scold you for tiring me, Ryder stood. I'll return tomorrow. Is there anything you need? Just your continued discretion. Her eyes opened slightly. And perhaps some paper for letters. There's someone I should contact, of course. Ryder hesitated at the door. Rest well, Katherine. Over the next week, Ryder divided his time between checking on Katherine's recovery and gathering intelligence about Blackwell. The mining magnate owned businesses throughout Butte, including the largest saloon, the hotel, and several boarding houses. His headquarters was a grand 3-story building on Main Street that housed both his offices and private residence. Sheriff Hollister, as Dr. Foster had suggested, was firmly in Blackwell's pocket. Ryder observed them dining together at the town's finest restaurant, heads bent in conversation, the sheriff laughing obsequiously at whatever Blackwell said. Meanwhile, Katherine improved rapidly under Martha's care. By the 10th day, she was able to move around her room without assistance, though her ribs still pained her with sudden movements. The bruises on her face had faded from purple to yellowish green, and her split lip had healed completely. Ryder found himself looking forward to his daily visits, enjoying Katherine's sharp wit and insightful observations about the town and its inhabitants. She had a gift for seeing through pretense that matched his own hard-earned cynicism. Have you thought about what you'll do once you're fully recovered? Ryder asked one afternoon as they shared tea in Martha's parlor, Katherine's first venture downstairs. Return to the claim, she said without hesitation. It's mine and I won't be driven from it by fear, Ryder frowned. Blackwell won't simply give up. I'm counting on that. A determined look crossed her face. I intend to be ready when he comes. You can't face him alone. I don't intend to. Katherine set down her teacup. I've written to my late husband's lawyer in Helena. He's agreed to help establish my legal rights to the claim. Ryder nodded approvingly. Smart move, but legal rights won't stop bullets. No, Katherine agreed. That's why I also wrote to James's cousin, a U.S. Marshal in Denver. He should arrive within the week. Surprised, Ryder sat back. You've been busy. Did you think I was just lying there feeling sorry for myself? A hint of mischief sparkled in her eyes. I've survived worse than Reginald Blackwell, Mr. Thompson. Have you? He asked quietly. Something vulnerable flickered across her face. Perhaps not. But I refuse to live in fear. She leaned forward. What about you? Why are you still in Butte? Surely you have somewhere to be. The question caught him off guard. I made you a promise, which you've more than fulfilled. I'm safe, healing, and have help on the way. Katherine studied him intently. What's really keeping you here, Ryder? He couldn't answer immediately because he wasn't entirely sure himself. For years he drifted, never staying anywhere long enough to form attachments. Yet something about Katherine Kirkland and her quiet courage had anchored him to Butte in a way he hadn't experienced since before the war. Maybe I'm tired of drifting, he finally said, surprising himself with the admission. Katherine's expression softened. Everyone needs a place to belong eventually. Before Ryder could respond, Martha bustled into the parlor. Mrs. Kirkland, you have a visitor, a Mr. Porter from Helena. Katherine brightened. The lawyer, please show him in. Ryder stood, suddenly feeling out of place. I should go. Stay, Katherine said quickly, reaching for his hand. Please. Something in her touch kept him rooted to the spot as Samuel Porter entered, a thin, bespectacled man in an immaculate suit who looked startled to find Katherine still bearing the fading evidence of her ordeal. Mrs. Kirkland, Porter exclaimed. "When you wrote of being attacked, I had no idea the severity. I'm recovering well, thank you," Katherine interrupted, gesturing to Ryder. "This is Ryder Thompson, the man who saved my life. He's been helping me navigate this situation." Porter nodded politely to Ryder before turning back to Katherine. "I've brought the documents you requested and reviewed your husband's will. Everything appears in order. The double K claim is indisputably yours." "Blackwell claims a partnership," Katherine explained. "Without written documentation, such claims are meaningless," Porter assured her. "However, given the circumstances, I took the liberty of filing a formal complaint with the territorial court regarding the assault and attempted murder." Ryder crossed his arms. "The local sheriff won't enforce it." Porter smiled thinly. "Which is why I've also contacted the federal marshal's office. Your husband's cousin, Marshal Kirkland, will have jurisdiction in a case involving mining claims on federal land." For the first time since meeting her, Ryder saw genuine relief in Katherine's expression. "When will Robert arrive?" He telegraphed that he expects to reach Butte by week's end. Porter set his briefcase on the table. "In the meantime, I suggest you remain hidden. Blackwell still believes you're dead or fled, which gives us an advantage." After Porter left, Katherine turned to Ryder with renewed hope. "With Robert's help, we can reclaim the mine legally." Ryder wanted to share her optimism but couldn't shake his unease. "Blackwell doesn't strike me as a man who respects legal proceedings." "Perhaps not," Katherine conceded. "But he respects power, and a U.S. Marshal carries significant authority." Later that evening, after ensuring Katherine was safely settled for the night, Ryder headed toward his hotel, his mind preoccupied with their conversation. He'd nearly reached the building when instinct made him duck into an alley seconds before two men passed. "Blackwell wants it handled before the marshal arrives," one was saying. "Word is the widow's lawyer came to town today. How's he so sure she's still alive?" the second man asked. "Someone at the doctor's has loose lips. Blackwell's offering 1,000 now for whoever finds her." The men continued past, unaware of Ryder's presence. His heart pounding, he waited until they disappeared around a corner before doubling back toward Martha's boarding house. The hour was late, but lights still burned in the parlor window. Martha answered his urgent knock with an irritated expression that quickly changed to concern when she saw his face. "What's happened?" "Blackwell knows Katherine's alive and in Butte," Ryder explained tersely. "Is she safe?" "Asleep upstairs." Martha glanced toward the staircase. "How did he find out?" "Someone at the doctor's talked. Blackwell's doubled the reward." Ryder ran a hand through his hair. "She can't stay here, it's too exposed." Martha's expression hardened. "I won't turn her out." "No one's suggesting that," Ryder assured her, "but we need a safer location until her cousin arrives." He hesitated. "Does your brother have any patients outside town, someone who might take her in temporarily?" Martha considered this. "There's the widow Jenkins. Lives about 5 miles north, keeps to herself since her husband died. William checks on her monthly for her rheumatism." "Could you arrange it tonight?" Martha nodded. "I'll wake William. You get Mrs. Kirkland ready." Upstairs, Ryder knocked softly on Katherine's door. When there was no answer, he knocked again, louder. "Katherine?" Concern mounting, he tested the handle and found it unlocked. The room beyond was empty, the bed neatly made. On the pillow lay a folded note addressed to him. "Ryder, I cannot continue to put you and the Fosters at risk. I've gone to reclaim what's mine. Please don't follow this as my fight. Your kindness has meant more than I can express." Katherine. Ryder crushed the note in his fist, cursing under his breath. Katherine had clearly overheard his conversation with Porter and decided to take matters into her own hands rather than wait for her cousin's arrival. He rushed downstairs to find Martha and Dr. Foster in the parlor. "She's gone," he announced. "Headed for the double K claim, I'd wager." Foster paled. "Alone at night, she'll never make it, or worse, Blackwell's men will find her." "How long ago?" Ryder demanded. Martha checked the hall clock. "I looked in on her around 8. That was 3 hours ago." Ryder calculated quickly. The double K was 15 miles north of Butte. On foot, Katherine couldn't have covered more than 5 or 6 miles, especially in her weakened condition. "I'm going after her," he decided. "Doctor, can I borrow your horse?" Foster nodded. "I'll come with you." "No," Ryder said firmly. "If Blackwell's men come looking, you need to be here acting normally. Just tell me how to reach the claim." Within minutes, Ryder was galloping north out of Butte on Foster's sturdy bay gelding. The night was clear, a full moon illuminating the trail that wound through the foothills. Every 100 yards, he stopped to listen and call Catherine's name, hoping she'd kept to the main trail despite the exposure it created. Nearly an hour into his search, Ryder spotted movement near a stand of pines, a pale figure stumbling forward determinedly. Relief washed over him as he urged the horse forward. "Katherine," she turned, her face ghostly in the moonlight. For a moment she looked ready to run, but exhaustion and pain won out. As Ryder dismounted, she swayed dangerously. "You shouldn't have come," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Neither should you." Ryder took her arm, steadying her. "What were you thinking?" "That I'm tired of waiting for others to determine my fate." Despite her exhaustion, her chin lifted defiantly. "I have the deed. If I can reach the claim and barricade myself in the cabin, I'll have legal possession when Robert arrives. And if Blackwell's men find you first," Ryder couldn't keep the frustration from his voice, "you'd be dead before your cousin sets foot in Montana territory." Catherine's shoulders slumped. "I just wanted to do something, to fight back." The vulnerability in her voice melted Ryder's anger. "I understand, but this isn't the way," he gestured to the horse. "Come on, we're going back to Butt." "I can't go back to Martha's," Katherine protested. "Blackwell knows I'm in town." "He'll find me eventually." "I know, that's why we're not staying in Butt." Ryder helped her mount the horse. "Dr. Foster suggested a place outside town. You'll be safe there until your cousin arrives." Katherine looked down at him, moonlight catching the unshed tears in her eyes. "Why are you doing all this for me, Ryder? You've risked so much already." Ryder mounted behind her, one arm securing her waist. "I made you a promise." "Is that the only reason?" He hesitated, suddenly aware of her warmth against his chest, the scent of lavender in her hair. "No," he admitted quietly. "That's not the only reason." The widow Jenkins's small ranch lay nestled in a sheltered valley, its modest cabin barely visible from the main trail. Martha had sent a ranch hand ahead with a message, so the widow was waiting when Ryder and Katherine arrived shortly before dawn. Eugenia Jenkins proved to be a sturdy woman in her 60s with a no-nonsense manner and surprisingly gentle hands. She took one look at Catherine's exhausted face and ushered her inside without questions. "There's a spare room ready," she announced, leading them through a cozy sitting room lined with bookshelves. "Dr. Foster says you need rest and safety. You'll find both here." "Thank you for taking me in," Katherine said. "I hope it won't be for long." "Stay as long as needed," the widow replied. "Been a while since I had company." She turned to Ryder. "You're welcome too, young man, though I've only the one spare bed." "I'll make do in the barn," Ryder assured her. "Just until we're certain no one followed us." After getting Katherine settled, Ryder returned to the kitchen where Mrs. Jenkins was preparing breakfast. The smell of coffee and frying bacon reminded him he hadn't eaten since noon the previous day. "Sit," the widow commanded, placing a steaming mug before him. "You look dead on your feet." Ryder obeyed gratefully. "Dr. Foster said you live alone out here. Isn't it dangerous?" Mrs. Jenkins snorted. "Been alone 5 years since my Henry passed. Got my shotgun and my wits. That's all the protection I need." She set a plate of eggs and bacon before him. "Now eat, then tell me what kind of trouble follows that young woman." Ryder gave her an abbreviated version of Catherine's situation as he ate. The widow listened without interruption, her weathered face darkening at the mention of Blackwell's name. "Knew that man when he first came to the territory," she said when Ryder finished. "Nothing but a card sharp with big dreams and small scruples. Now he's got half the county terrified." She shook her head disgustedly. "Men like that only understand one language." Ryder raised an eyebrow. "And what language is that?" Mrs. Jenkins smiled grimly. "The kind spoken with steel, Mr. Thompson." She reached for a shotgun propped against the wall. "Which is why Henry's old greener stays loaded." For 3 days, Katherine rested at the Jenkins ranch while Ryder alternated between standing guard and making cautious trips into Butt for news. Marshal Robert Kirkland had arrived as promised and was making his presence known, questioning Sheriff Hollister openly about the attack on his cousin and the disputed mining claim. "Blackwell's furious," Dr. Foster informed Ryder during one visit. "The marshal's presence has legitimized Catherine's claims, and several townspeople who were afraid to speak up are now providing testimonies about Blackwell's strong-arm tactics." Has the marshal searched Blackwell's office for James's journal? Ryder asked. Not yet. He's building a case first, gathering witnesses. Foster lowered his voice. But word is Blackwell's preparing to leave town. Several of his men were seen loading trunks onto wagons yesterday. Ryder's instincts flared. He's not running, he's consolidating. What do you mean? If Blackwell can't have the claim legally, he'll take it by force. Ryder stood abruptly. I need to get back to the ranch. How soon can the marshal meet us there? I'll send word immediately, Foster promised. Be careful, Thompson. Blackwell's desperate now, and desperate men are unpredictable. Riding hard, Ryder reached the Jenkins ranch by mid-afternoon. The peaceful scene that greeted him, Katherine and Mrs. Jenkins hanging laundry in the yard, belied the danger he felt approaching. Katherine smiled at his arrival, her face now almost healed, only a faint yellowish bruise remaining around her left eye. The days of rest had restored her strength, and in the simple blue dress borrowed from Mrs. Jenkins's closet, she looked like she belonged on the frontier. You're back earlier than expected, she observed as he dismounted. We need to prepare, Ryder said without preamble. I believe Blackwell may be planning something. Katherine's smile faded. What kind of something? The kind that ends with him claiming you're mine regardless of the law. Ryder took her arm, leading her toward the house. Your cousin is building a case, but Blackwell's running out of options. He won't wait for justice to take its course. Inside, they found Mrs. Jenkins already preparing for trouble, checking her shotgun and pistol with practiced hands. Figured as much, she said when Ryder explained his concerns. Men like Blackwell don't surrender power willingly. I've asked the marshal to meet us here, Ryder continued, but we should be ready in case Blackwell moves first. Katherine retrieved the deed from its hiding place in her corset. This is what he wants. Perhaps I should face him directly with Robert present, end this standoff legally. Too risky, Ryder objected. Even with the marshal present, Blackwell could have men waiting to ambush you later. Mrs. Jenkins nodded agreement. Better to draw him out here, away from town, where his influence is weaker. How? Katherine asked. Ryder considered their options. We let word leak that you're recuperating here, make it seem like you're vulnerable when in fact we'll be ready. Using me as bait, Katherine said flatly. Using your situation to our advantage, Ryder corrected, but only if the marshal arrives in time to make any confrontation official. They spent the remainder of the day preparing the small ranch for potential conflict. Ryder checked sightlines from every window, positioned rifles at strategic points, and ensured multiple exit routes were clear. As darkness fell, a sense of anticipation hung over the cabin. Katherine found Ryder on the porch after dinner, staring into the gathering darkness. Do you truly believe he'll come tonight? Maybe not tonight, Ryder admitted, but soon. Blackwell's lost too much face in town to back down now. She leaned against the porch railing beside him. I never thanked you properly, you know. For what? For finding me that day. Katherine's voice softened. For promising I'd never be touched in anger again. Ryder turned to face her, struck by how the fading daylight illuminated the auburn highlights in her hair. You don't need to thank me. Nevertheless, I am grateful. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. You changed the course of my life, Ryder Thompson. You would have survived without my help, he said, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. Katherine shook her head. Perhaps, but not in the same way. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining naturally. You reminded me there are still good men in this world. Ryder looked down at their joined hands, aware of a tightness in his chest that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with the woman before him. Katherine eyed the distant sound of approaching horses interrupted whatever he might have said, both tensed, listening as the hoofbeats grew closer. Get inside, Ryder urged, reaching for his rifle. Katherine squeezed his hand once before moving swiftly to the door. Be careful. 3 riders approached the ranch, their silhouettes visible in the moonlight. Ryder positioned himself in the shadows of the porch, rifle ready, as Mrs. Jenkins took her place at an upstairs window with her shotgun. Katherine remained near the front door, a pistol Ryder had insisted she take now gripped firmly in her hand. As the riders drew closer, Ryder recognized the lead figure's posture and felt a wave of relief. It's the marshal, he called softly to Katherine. Robert Kirkland was a broad-shouldered man with a stern face that bore a striking resemblance to the daguerreotype of James that Katherine kept. He dismounted with the fluid grace of a man accustomed to long hours in the saddle, his marshal's badge catching the moonlight as he approached the porch. "Thompson," he called. "Here," Ryder replied, stepping from the shadows. "Katherine's inside, safe." The marshal nodded, gesturing to the two men behind him, one wearing a deputy's badge, the other in civilian clothes. "Deputy Collins and Mr. Howard, the territorial prosecutor. We're here to escort Mrs. Kirkland back to Butte. Tonight," Ryder frowned. "Is that wise, more dangerous to wait?" Kirkland's expression was grim. "Blackwell's hired additional gunmen. They were asking about this ranch in town today." The door opened behind them as Katherine stepped onto the porch. "Robert," she greeted her cousin warmly, "I'm so grateful you came." The marshal embraced her briefly. "I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner, Katie. James would never forgive me for letting this happen. What's your plan?" Ryder asked, still uncertain about moving Katherine tonight. "We return to Butte immediately," Kirkland explained. "The prosecutor has prepared formal charges against Blackwell. With Katherine's testimony and the evidence we've gathered from other victims of Blackwell's tactics, we'll arrest him tonight." "And if he resists," Ryder pressed, the marshal's hand moved to his sidearm, "then he'll answer to a higher justice than the territorial court." Katherine touched Ryder's arm. "This is what we've been waiting for, a chance to end this legally." Ryder looked into her determined face and knew arguing was pointless. "I'm coming with you." "Wouldn't have it any other way," the marshal agreed unexpectedly. "Katherine speaks highly of you, Thompson, says you're the reason she's alive to seek justice at all." Within the hour, they were riding toward Butte, Mrs. Jenkins having insisted on accompanying them with her shotgun across her saddle. The night was clear but moonless, the stars providing just enough light to navigate the trail. "Blackwell's staying at his house on the north side of town," Kirkland explained as they rode. "We'll approach from the east, avoiding Main Street where his men might be watching." Katherine rode close to Ryder, their horses moving in unconscious synchronization. "Are you worried?" she asked quietly, "about confronting Blackwell?" "No." Ryder's gaze remained focused on the trail ahead. "About your safety, yes." "I'm surrounded by armed men who care about my welfare," she reminded him. "And I'm not the same woman Blackwell's men left for dead 2 weeks ago." Ryder glanced at her, noting the straight set of her shoulders, the determined line of her jaw. No, she certainly wasn't the same broken woman he'd found beside that abandoned wagon. She'd reclaimed her strength, her purpose, and in doing so, had somehow helped him reclaim something of himself as well. They reached Butte just after midnight, the mining town quiet except for the usual sounds from the saloons still operating. Kirkland led them through back streets toward a large house set slightly apart from its neighbors, its windows dark. "That's Blackwell's residence," the marshal explained, dismounting in the shadow of a livery stable. "We'll approach on foot from here." As they secured their horses, a figure emerged from the darkness. Dr. Foster, his face drawn with concern. "Marshal," he greeted tersely, "you need to hurry. Blackwell's men were loading wagons at his office an hour ago. I think he's planning to flee before morning." Kirkland cursed under his breath. "Change of plans. Thompson, you and Mrs. Jenkins stay with Katherine, deputy with me, we'll check the house. Mr. Howard, head to Blackwell's office with Dr. Foster." "I'm coming with you," Katherine insisted. "Katie, this is my fight, Robert. I need to see it through." The marshal hesitated before nodding reluctantly. "Stay behind us." They approached the house cautiously, the silence of the street suddenly ominous. The front door stood partially open, unusual for the home of a man with as many enemies as Blackwell. Kirkland drew his revolver, motioning for the others to stay back as he and his deputy approached the door. "Federal Marshal," he called. "Anyone inside, show yourself." No response came from the darkened interior. With a nod to his deputy, Kirkland pushed the door fully open, the hinges creaking in the night silence. The house beyond was in disarray, drawers pulled open, papers scattered across the floor, furniture overturned. Signs of a hasty departure. "He's gone," the deputy observed, lowering his weapon slightly. Ryder's instinct screamed a warning. "Or he wants us to think so." The floorboards above them creaked. In the next instant, a shot rang out and the deputy fell with a cry of pain, clutching his shoulder. Chaos erupted. Kirkland dove for cover behind an overturned table as more shots splintered the wood around him. Ryder pulled Katherine down behind a sofa, shielding her with his body as Mrs. Jenkins returned fire toward the staircase. "So the widow Kirkland returns from the dead," Blackwell's voice called from the upper landing. "Bringing the law with her, how predictable." "Reginald Blackwell," Kirkland shouted, "you're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and assault. Surrender now," mocking laughter echoed through the house. "I don't think so, Marshal. This territory operates by different rules than your federal courts." More gunfire erupted, keeping them pinned down. Ryder could see at least 2 gunmen on the upper floor besides Blackwell, their muzzle flashes illuminating the darkness. "The back door," Ryder whispered to Katherine. "When I create a distraction, run for it." "I won't leave you," she hissed. "You have to. Get to the prosecutor, bring reinforcements." His hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing once. "Trust me." Before she could protest further, Ryder broke cover, firing rapidly toward the staircase as he rolled to a new position. The move drew all enemy fire his way, giving Katherine her chance. She hesitated only a moment before darting toward the kitchen and the back door beyond. One of Blackwell's men spotted her movement and turned to fire, but Mrs. Jenkins's shotgun roared, dropping him where he stood. "The woman's escaping," Blackwell shouted. "Stop her," Ryder continued firing, providing covering fire as Katherine disappeared into the kitchen. A moment later, he heard the back door slam. Marshal Kirkland had used the distraction to reach his wounded deputy and drag him to safer cover. "We need to hold out until Katherine brings help," he called to Ryder. "She won't get far," Blackwell taunted. "My men surround this house." As if confirming his words, a woman's scream came from the yard behind the house, followed by a triumphant shout. Ryder's blood ran cold. "Katherine." "Bring her in," Blackwell ordered someone unseen. Moments later, Katherine was thrust into the room, her arms held tightly by a burly man with a scar across his cheek. Ryder recognized him as one of the men who had been discussing Blackwell's plans in Butt. "Let her go, Blackwell," Kirkland demanded. "This is between you and the law." "The law." Blackwell emerged from the shadows at the top of the stairs, a well-dressed man in his 50s with cold eyes and an immaculately trimmed beard. "In Montana territory, I am the law." He descended slowly, a revolver trained on Katherine, especially when it comes to what's mine. "The double K was never yours," Katherine said, her voice steady despite the fear visible in her eyes. "Your husband understood business, Mrs. Kirkland." "He knew nothing happens in this territory without my approval." Blackwell reached the bottom step. "Now, where is the deed?" "Safe," Katherine replied, "along with James's journal detailing your true agreement." A flicker of uncertainty crossed Blackwell's face. "You're bluffing." "My men searched everywhere." "Not everywhere." Katherine's gaze met Ryder's across the room, a silent message passing between them. Blackwell followed her gaze, studying Ryder with new interest. "Ah, the hero who rescued the damsel. Tell me, Cowboy, was she worth the trouble?" Ryder's finger tightened on his trigger. "Let her go and you might walk away from this." "Unlikely." Blackwell gestured to his remaining gunman. "Check him for the deed." As the man moved toward Ryder, a shotgun blast from outside shattered a window. Mrs. Jenkins had somehow circled around to the front of the house. The momentary distraction was all Ryder needed. He fired twice, hitting the approaching gunman in the chest. Simultaneously, Kirkland shot at Blackwell, catching him in the shoulder and spinning him backward. Katherine drove her elbow into her captor's ribs and broke free, diving toward the floor as gunfire erupted from all sides. Ryder lunged forward, grabbing her arm and pulling her behind an overturned sideboard as bullets splintered the wood around them. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, checking her quickly for injuries. "No," she gasped. But Robert the Marshal was exchanging fire with Blackwell, who had taken cover behind a heavy desk. The businessman's face was contorted with pain and rage as blood spread across his expensive jacket. "It's over, Blackwell," Kirkland shouted. "Your men are down. Surrender now. Nothing's over while I'm breathing," Blackwell snarled, raising his gun toward where Katherine and Ryder crouched. Ryder didn't hesitate. He fired once, the shot striking Blackwell squarely in the chest. The businessman's expression registered surprise before he crumpled to the floor. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the wounded deputy's labored breathing and the distant sound of voices approaching from town. "Is he?" Katherine couldn't finish the question. Kirkland approached Blackwell's motionless form cautiously, kicking his weapon away before checking for a pulse. After a moment, he looked up and shook his head. "It's finished," he said simply. Mrs. Jenkins appeared in the broken window, her shotgun still at the ready. "Prosecutors coming with the sheriff and some deputies," she announced. "Looks like half the town's following them." Ryder helped Katherine to her feet, suddenly aware that his hands were shaking with residual adrenaline and relief. She leaned against him, her own strength seemingly drained by the night's events. "You saved me again," she murmured, Ryder's arm tightened around her waist. "We saved each other." The following days passed in a blur of formal statements, legal proceedings, and revelations. With Blackwell dead, many who had feared him came forward with accounts of his criminal activities. James Kirkland's journal was recovered from Blackwell's office safe, confirming Katherine's version of their business arrangement. The territorial prosecutor officially recognized her full ownership of the Double K Silver Mine. Sheriff Hollister resigned in disgrace when evidence of his collusion with Blackwell emerged. Several of Blackwell's associates fled the territory rather than face prosecution. And the town of Butte, while shocked by the violence that had unfolded, seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief at the end of Blackwell's reign. Throughout it all, Ryder remained at Katherine's side, serving as both protector and support as she navigated the aftermath. They stayed at Dr. Foster's home, the doctor insisting Katherine needed continued medical supervision after her ordeal. A week after Blackwell's death, Marshal Kirkland prepared to return to Denver, the wounded deputy well enough to travel. "You've got a good life waiting in Butte now, Katie," the marshal told his cousin as they said their goodbyes. "The mine's producing well, and with Blackwell gone, you'll have no trouble hiring honest men to work it." "I know," Katherine smiled, though something uncertain lingered in her expression. "Thank you for coming when I needed you." Kirkland glanced at Ryder, who stood a respectful distance away. "You going to stick around, Thompson?" Katie could use someone watching her back until things settle completely. The question caught Ryder off guard. Until that moment, he hadn't consciously considered his next steps. For weeks, his sole focus had been Katherine's safety and helping her reclaim what was rightfully hers. Now that those goals were accomplished, he found himself at a crossroads. "That's up to Mrs. Kirkland," he replied carefully. Katherine's gaze met his, something unspoken passing between them. "I would welcome Mr. Thompson's continued presence," she said softly, "if he wishes to stay." After the marshal departed, Ryder and Katherine walked through Butte's bustling Main Street, the mining town continuing its daily business as though the events of recent weeks were already fading into legend. "I meant what I said to Robert," Katherine said eventually. "The Double K needs good people, trustworthy people." Ryder glanced at her. "Are you offering me a job, Mrs. Kirkland? I'm offering you a partnership." She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "I know how to run a business, but I know nothing about mining. James always handled that side of things." "Neither do I," Ryder admitted. "I've never mined silver in my life, but you know people, you can judge character." Katherine's expression grew earnest. "More importantly, I trust you, Ryder. That's rare for me, especially now." The offer tempted him more than he wanted to admit. After years of drifting, the idea of staying in one place, of building something, appealed to him in ways he hadn't anticipated. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "You could hire experienced mine managers from Virginia City, men who know the business." Katherine stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Because none of them would have stopped to help a beaten woman left to die beside the road. None of them would have promised she'd never be touched in anger again." Her hand found his. "None of them are you." In that moment, looking into Katherine's determined blue eyes, Ryder recognized something he'd been avoiding since the day he found her. He cared for this woman beyond the protective instinct that had first driven him to help her. Somewhere along their journey together, admiration had deepened into something more profound. "I'll stay," he said simply, "but not just for the mine." Understanding dawned in Katherine's expression, followed by a slow smile that transformed her face. "I was hoping you'd say that." 2 months later, the Double K mine was operating at full capacity. Under Ryder's supervision, a crew of 30 men extracted ore that assayer reports confirmed was among the richest in the territory. Katherine managed the business operations from a small office in Butte, negotiating contracts and handling the financial aspects with an acumen that surprised many who had underestimated the widow Kirkland. Together, they formed a partnership that quickly became the talk of, but not only for its business success, but for the obvious connection growing between the mine owner and her rugged foreman. "People are talking, Doctor," Foster observed one evening as he joined Ryder and Katherine for dinner at her newly purchased home on the respectable side of town. "The matchmakers of Butte have you two married off already." Katherine laughed, though a blush colored her cheeks. "The gossips will always find something to discuss." "And what are they saying?" Ryder asked, more amused than concerned. "That it's highly improper for a widow to spend so much time in the company of an unmarried man." Foster's eyes twinkled. "Especially one who looks at her the way you do, Thompson." Ryder met Katherine's gaze across the table, no longer attempting to hide the affection he felt. "Let them talk." Later, after Foster departed, Katherine and Ryder sat on the front porch of her home, watching the lights of Butte flicker against the darkening sky. In the month since her recovery, she had blossomed the confident, intelligent woman who had been momentarily broken by violence, now fully restored and strengthened by her trials. "William's right, you know," she said, breaking their comfortable silence. "The gossip is getting rather specific." "Does it bother you?" Ryder asked. Katherine considered the question, "Not the gossip itself, but it does make me think about the future." She turned to face him. "What are we doing, Ryder?" The directness of her question didn't surprise him. It was characteristic of the woman he'd come to admire so deeply. "I thought we were building something, together. The mine, more than that." Ryder reached for her hand, something he'd done with increasing frequency in recent weeks. "Katherine, when I found you that day, I had no intention of staying in Montana territory. I was passing through, same as I'd been passing through places for years." "What changed?" "You." The simple truth emerged easily. "You reminded me what it means to fight for something worthwhile. To care about someone else more than myself." Katherine's fingers tightened around his. "I never expected to feel this way again after James died. I thought that part of my life was over." "And now?" Ryder asked quietly. Instead of answering with words, Katherine leaned forward and kissed him a gentle touch that conveyed everything words could not. When she pulled back, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears and certainty. "Now I know better," she whispered. 3 weeks later, on a clear autumn day, Katherine Kirkland became Katherine Thompson in a simple ceremony at Martha Foster's boarding house. Dr. Foster gave the bride away, Mrs. Jenkins provided a wedding feast that had the entire town talking for weeks, and Marshal Kirkland returned from Denver to stand as Ryder's best man. "Never seen a man look at a woman the way you look at Katie," Kirkland told Ryder during the celebration afterward. "Makes me believe in second chances. For both of us," Ryder agreed, watching as his new wife laughed with Martha across the room. "I never expected this life." "Few of us get the lives we expect," the marshal observed. "The lucky ones get the lives they need." As winter settled over Montana territory, the Thompsons established their home in a spacious cabin near the Double K mine. The silver continued to flow, bringing prosperity that Katherine insisted on sharing with the community, establishing a fund for widows and orphans of miners killed in accidents, contributing to Butte's first proper school building, and ensuring that her workers received fair wages and safe conditions. Ryder, for his part, found purpose in protecting both the mine and the woman who had changed his life. His past as a Union cavalry officer, something he had kept largely private, proved valuable in organizing security and managing the logistics of a growing mining operation. On a snowy evening near Christmas, Ryder returned home to find Katherine sitting before the fire, her expression thoughtful as she stared into the flames. "Something on your mind?" he asked, hanging his coat near the door. Katherine looked up, a smile spreading across her face. "Many things." "All good." Ryder settled beside her, drawing her against his side. After months together, the simple pleasure of holding her had not diminished in the slightest. "Care to share them?" "I was thinking about that day you found me," she said softly. "How close I came to dying alone out there." "Katherine, no, let me finish." She placed a finger against his lips. I was thinking about how sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best. Her hand moved to cover his, and I was thinking that it's time to share some news with you. Something in her tone made Ryder's heart skip. What news? Katherine guided his hand to rest against her stomach. Dr. Foster confirmed it yesterday. We'll have a child by summer. For a moment, Ryder couldn't speak, overwhelmed by emotions he hadn't known himself capable of feeling. A child. His child, their child. Say something, Katherine prompted, uncertainty creeping into her voice. Ryder pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world because she was. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. For what? For surviving, for fighting. For trusting me. He drew back enough to look into her eyes. For giving me a family when I thought I'd always be alone. Katherine's eyes shimmered with tears. You gave me a future when I thought mine was over. She cupped his face between her hands. You kept your promise, Ryder Thompson. I haven't been touched in anger since the day you found me only in love. As snow fell softly outside their window and firelight danced across their faces, Ryder sealed that truth with a kiss, marveling at how a single moment of compassion on a dusty Montana road had led to a lifetime of love neither of them had expected to find. In the years that followed, the legend of the Double K Mine grew, as did the Thompson family. Their son James Robert, born in the summer of 1879, was joined by twin daughters Elizabeth and Margaret 2 years later. The mine's prosperity allowed them to build a proper home in Butte, though they always maintained the cabin near the mine as a retreat from town life. Katherine eventually published her novel about life in the Montana Territory, drawing on her experiences to create a story that found popularity in eastern cities, where readers hungered for authentic tales of frontier life. Ryder, once resistant to putting down roots, became a respected figure in the community, serving on the town council and using his influence to push for fair treatment of miners throughout the region. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and they had moments alone, Katherine would sometimes trace the lines that life had etched on Ryder's face and remember the words that had changed everything. You'll never be touched in anger again. Words that had become the foundation of a love neither of them had been looking for, but both had desperately needed to find.